Hey guys, welcome back to episode 9 of the Poop Naked Preseason podcast. I think I nailed the intro that time. That was a good one. We are all the way up to our second place finisher from last year, Mr. Logan Forseth. Logan is another friend of Ben's. I believe they partied at UND together. Logan's been a great addition to the league. He's been active in trades, active in free agents. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how his team shakes out. So let's get started. Looking at the bar graph, kind of shocking that, for a second place team, he's third from last in terms of total value. So let's scroll down and see how that kind of breaks down, see if we can make sense of it. Kind of interesting. He's the only one out of our 10 teams who's in the frisky category. So that's kind of exciting for you, Logan. Nothing wrong with being frisky, but coming off a second place finish, that's probably not what you want to see. In terms of his team makeup, it certainly makes sense why the aggregate value would make this more of a frisky, kind of a caught in the middle type team. At quarterback, love it. Josh Allen, stud. I can't remember the last time, other than his rookie year, that he was not at least the quarterback 2 overall. He's just so good. He's good with his arm. He gives you the rushing. He's what you want as your dynasty quarterback 1. So solid. He's young. Probably will never decrease in value unless the worst happens. Unless he starts getting massages from Deshaun Watson's gals. Great foundational piece for dynasty. After that, though, kind of drops off. He's got 3 viable starters, but both of them are pretty low end QB2s. I think if Russ can put out the grease fire from last year and quit making instant ramen and start learning from sous chef Sean Payton, I think he could definitely bump his value. But he's a lot older than I thought. Like he's definitely getting older. He doesn't really rush anymore. So he's got to beat you with his arm. And I just don't know if he's going to have enough to give Logan a week-to-week advantage in the super flex spot. Same thing with Jimmy Garoppolo. He's very statuesque. He's probably like budget Derek Carr, which is saying something. Quarterback room, very top heavy. So love Allen, but you probably are losing the positional advantage you get from him every week when you're factoring what you're rolling out from the Superflex spot. So we'll just go left to right here. Running back room, also certainly very interesting. Josh Jacobs came out of nowhere and was spectacular last season. So it'll be interesting to see if they just run him into the ground. I think they will. I think he's only on a 1-year deal. So it'll be interesting to see if he can maintain that efficiency he showed from last year. Alexander Madison, big question mark. This is probably my most overvalued running back. And I say that as a Vikings fan. He did great when he was the starter, but when he was the starter, he was typically playing the Bears and the Lions. So I think a lot of his, points per game in those matchups where he was a starter, I think they're pretty skewed. But they really don't have much for depth behind him. So in terms of a sheer volume play, I like him as a running back too. I just don't know if he's going to hold up over his season. I don't know if he's going to be efficient over his season. And I don't know if they're going to stick with him for very much longer. They could very well add someone in coming years. So I think as a contender, he's fine. But, to me, he's just hard to value in terms of year-over-year dynasty value. Brian Robinson, he's a pretty polarizing player. Like a lot of people liked him. He kind of had a boring profile coming out of Alabama. It's pretty badass that he got shot a bunch of times and was able to play last year. I just don't know what to make of it. If he's more talented than I give him credit for, he could easily be a great flex play. Same with Dalvin Cook. Dalvin Cook has declined in efficiency over the last 3 seasons, but he still has been great for fantasy. So if Breece Hall is banged up this year and a little bit slow, which I think he will be, I think Dalvin Cook is going to be a great running back 2 flex play. So I think his running back room, even though it's 7th overall, I think as a starters week to week, it's very good. But it really falls off fast. Like Zamir White, he's got his own handcuff, which is good. Because if Jacobs goes down, he doesn't have much else. Jaleel McLaughlin is kind of a interesting one. He was like a preseason all-star, so it'll be interesting to see how much they give him week to week. Maybe he becomes a usable player. But these guys, I mean, they're just kind of trash. Same with Cordero, like he's a, if Bijan goes down, yeah, it'll be just interesting to see how they use him. He just seems gadgety, but also kind of oddly efficient when he gets touches. So definitely a weird guy to value in terms of the running back position. Let's see. Let's do tight ends next. Logan, it's easy to see what team he roots for. He has Broncos at basically every position, sometimes to his benefit, sometimes to his detriment. He kind of hit the sunk cost with Albert O. Greg Dulcich looked really good as a rookie last year, but his preseason usage kind of questions whether they're gonna give him all the touches or not, or if they're gonna stick with Troutman, who Sean Payton loves. But definitely it's a good tight end 3. Laporta is a pretty good dart throw. Very athletic tight end, good profile coming out of Iowa. Good situation where he'll probably get all the snaps. For the Lions at starting tight end. So I like him a lot. He'll probably pop in value, even if he has like 600 yards receiving. TJ Hawkinson, super high on Hawkinson. He had so many targets when he joined the Vikings. I think in terms of PPR, he's great, but he just doesn't offer you much like yards after catch. So if they give him the volume they did last year, I think Hawkinson will absolutely smash. But if they dial it back and more evenly distribute it between Addison and Hawkinson after JJ, I don't know that Hawkinson will give you that upside, but certainly would feel great about having him as my starter at tight end in this league. Going on to wide receivers, he probably has some of the more exciting young starters in our league. CeeDee Lamb, Jalen Waddle, both super young, super talented, both arguably top 8 dynasty receivers. Love them both. Love. Greatest starters, greatest foundational pieces. Brandon Ayuk, I've been trying to get him for most of last year, eventually gave up. I think he's very underrated as a route runner. I think it's just more of a San Francisco has so many mouths to feed. Hard to know if he'll, step into this kind of range as Waddle or Lamb. But I would feel awesome about having him as my wide receiver 3. Pickens is one that's kind of hard for me to value. There's a ton of hype because when he makes highlight catches, they're spectacular. But a lot of his peripherals, like his win rates against zone and man coverage, just aren't very good. He's not super refined as a route runner, but you could argue that Matt Canada also used him very poorly in terms of routes he was asked to run. I could see George Pickens just absolutely exploding if he has 1,000-yard season with like 70 catches. I think that would be perfect. I love him as a flex in this format. Same thing with Jerry Jeudy. Jerry Jeudy, he came out as like billed as such a great route runner, but his advanced metrics just never paint him in that top tier against like zone coverage. And he just doesn't give you much yak. When he's healthy, he definitely flashes, but he just has not been healthy. Like with the ankle injury last year and the hamstring this year, it sounds like a pretty bad hamstring. Like he might not be back for 6 weeks into the season. And even if he does come back, he'll be a higher risk to re-aggravate it and miss time. And that's the problem, I think, with Logan's team is that his top 5 guys are very good, but after that, it just kind of falls off very hard. Thornton, I don't think carries much value for me. Tillman is interesting, but he's just so buried on the Browns. Hodgins and Campbell, he's kind of hedging his bets on who the wide receiver 1 is behind Darren Waller. But the guys at the bottom just kind of like trashy, like Corey Davis retired, Phil Dorsett. I don't know what team he plays for, which is saying something. And then LaVisca, Xavier Hutchinson. I don't even know if anybody's given you a fifth for those guys. In terms of draft capital, though, we'll come back to that. He's been fairly active about trading away, so doesn't own his first. I believe Kane owns his first as part of the Jalen Waddle trade. So, yeah, it's an interesting move. Last year at the time, I think it made sense. It'll be interesting to see where that pick falls when those birds come home to roost. Is that pick like a top 5 pick or is it a bottom 5 pick? I think that's really how you'll be able to judge that Jalen Waddle trade is how Logan's team finishes this year. I think will be really interesting. But let's go through and see trades. Logan's been one of the more active people. We rehashed a lot of these when I did Aaron's video. I think both, like, all these trades make sense for each person. But I think as a contender, Logan probably lost some value here. He gained some years going from Madison to Henry, but losing Geno Smith in the process, I think, was not great considering who he had as his QB2 behind Josh Allen. I think picking up Dalvin Cook here was very savvy. This trade was kind of a nothing burger, a DPJ and a third seems pretty fair. I don't know that either moves the needle. I think he drafted Laporta with this pick, but I can't be certain. I'll have to go back and check that. Same thing here. Campbell in a third, like, again, probably a nothing. I wanted the dart. He needed the receiver depth. Worked out good for both sides, I think. Let's see what the draft was, because I want to know who he got with that 3rd round pick. So it must have been the one he traded to me, and then I got Tajay Spears. So really he traded, wait a sec. I gotta go back here. All these teams are kind of running together now. All these trades. So sorry about this. This is not the production value you should expect from someone as experienced at this as me. Okay, so he got that 3rd from Ben for DPJ. So he turned that 3rd into essentially Paris Campbell. So he traded DPJ for Paris Campbell. You could argue like that's again kind of a wash. Campbell's been pretty hyped earlier in the preseason as maybe the wide receiver to own behind Darren Waller. So I could see that being a startable flex player. I was happy to get the handcuff to Derrick Henry, the heir apparent to Derrick Henry. So to me, it was worth it, given that had better depth, I felt, to where I could lose that. So again, not any trades I think that really killed him, except for that first one, maybe trading Geno away, because I would much rather roll out Josh Allen and Geno Smith and Derrick Henry with Josh Jacobs as a contender. I think if he doesn't make that trade, but he makes all the other ones, I think he's probably at contender or fraud. I feel like he'd be pretty close there. So it'll be interesting to see if he keeps being very active. I think I would be definitely looking to make some moves, but it'll be interesting to see if he burns through draft capital or, maybe trades some tight end depth for things he needs along the way. But it's definitely an interesting team. I have a feeling that this will be caught in the middle just because I don't believe in Russell Wilson, and he's got a lot invested in hurt Jerry Jeudy. Like if Jerry Jeudy misses a tremendous amount of time, I just don't know how he replaces that depth. And that almost certainly makes Russell Wilson worse. So if Jeudy comes back fast and Russell Wilson is much better under Sean Payton, I think Logan will probably be fine. And losing that 1st round pick won't hurt so much. But if it goes the other way, I think he might find himself in a similar situation as Ben last year, where he traded his first, and then just kind of like was stuck towards the middle and ultimately not able to make noise. So I think Logan might have to make a decision early to pick a direction unless everything breaks his way. But he's definitely in a good spot going forward because he has such high end pieces at 3 out of the 4 key positions, and running back is the easiest position to replace or get cheap through the draft. And wide receiver depth is relatively cheap to acquire. So Logan, I think it'll be an interesting year for you. I hope you keep being active on the trade markets and with free agents, and maybe try not to get too drawn towards any Broncos player that trends on sleeper. Hopefully Russ can cook. I mean, the league is more fun when it's Chef Russ versus McDonald's Russ. So good luck. I'll see you guys in the next episode.